Ielts Listening, version 56658. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Part 1 on page 2 of your question booklet. Part 1. You will hear a teenager asking about joining a film club. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
Hi, can I help you?
Yeah, I saw on the internet that you have a film club here at the cinema, but there wasn't a lot about it. Can you tell me a bit more?
Yes, we're still setting up the web page. Sorry about that. We only started the club a few months ago. It's been very popular right from the beginning. We have regular film showings and there are lots of other benefits.
How often does the club meet?
Every 2 weeks, on Thursday nights.
OK. And I'm 16, so could I join?
Sure. People of any age can join.
Right. So how much does it cost to join?
Well, it depends. The basic charge is £24 a season, but for people eligible for concessions, it's £21.50.
I'm a student.
You'd get the concession rate then.
That's good.
That entitles you to free entry to the club films and also to £2 off tickets for all other films on at the cinema. So you'd pay £4.50 instead of £6.50.
Great. OK.
Now, I don't know if this applies to you, but club members are also eligible for 3 hours complimentary parking when there's a film on.
Well, I don't drive, but my girlfriend does, so it might be useful, yes. OK, well, I'd definitely like to join.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
Can you give me any information about the next few films you're showing?
I'm afraid we've run out of leaflets for this season, so I'll tell you about the next few films and hopefully we'll have all the details on the internet soon. So the next meeting's this Thursday, October the 14th, and that's a film called Pablo.
I read the reviews of that. It's set in Argentina, isn't it? About a child who's run away from home?
That's right. It just came out recently.
And the kid somehow gets on TV and he wins a dance competition or something.
A singing competition, yeah. I haven't seen it either, but it tells you on the posters. Yes, it sounds really good.
Well, I definitely want to see that. What's on after that?
On October the 28th, there's an American film called The Soldier. That's an old silent movie. But in this showing, we have someone who'll accompany it on the piano, just like they used to in the old cinemas, though it was sometimes an organ accompaniment in those days.
It must be a pretty old film then. When did they release the first talkies? 1926 or 27?
Yes, well, this was made in 1922, so well before. Though I think they had short feature films with sound by 1923, actually.
So what sort of film is it?
Well, it's billed as a comedy, though you'd think it was a war film from the title. I don't know much about the plot. We don't have much information, though you could always look it up on the internet.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Then the next film after that, so that'll be, let's see, the 11th of November, is a film about animals. And it's just called Tiger. And that's a cartoon film, which makes it sound as if it's for children, but actually it's aimed at adults, and it's really quite frightening in places. I saw it when it first came out.
What's it about?
It's got no humans in it at all. It's just about the effect of environmental changes millions of years ago on the animals who lived then. It's a really strange film. There's a talk afterwards given by the director, so that should be very popular. You'll need to book early for that, I should think.
Right. Well, thanks for all that. Now, if you can give me the application form...
Sure.
That is the end of Part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 1. Section 2. You will hear the director of a club giving a talk about an ancient game played on ice called curling. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16 on page 4. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the Montreal Curling Club. I hope you'll enjoy the introductory program we've prepared for you. I'll start with a brief introduction to the game itself and the equipment, so that you'll be able to enjoy it when you watch it later on. I'll then go on to say a little about the history of the sport and the club. So, first, let's take a look at the game of curling and the implements it uses. It's played on ice, and the object of the game is for two teams to push heavy stones across the ice towards a target. Now, there are 4 people in each of the 2 teams. The first is called the lead. The next is called the second. The next, surprise, surprise, is called the third. And the final player, who is absolutely key, functions as the captain, but is always called the skip. That's S-K-I-P. The area of play on the ice, whether it be on a rink or on a frozen lake or stream, is called the sheet. This long, thin area is 42.15 meters by only 4.25 meters. And unlike ice hockey ice, for example, it is constantly groomed by frequent shaving to keep it perfectly level. At either end of this are the 2 zones for the targets. Each one is known as a house. A little bit about the equipment we need. The stones are made from granite. Originally, these were held by your fingers in holes specially carved out in the top. But then it was decided to add a handle to get a better grip. The other distinctive implement is the brush, or broom. This is used for 2 purposes. to clean the ice, of course, but more crucially, to warm it. This melts the ice slightly and lessens the friction, so you get a smoother slide. Curling is not an expensive sport. You don't buy your own stones. In fact, it is illegal to play in a match with your own stones, but you can use your own brush. There are two main types, Scottish and Canadian. The former are normally made out of horsehair, and the latter, which are now more frequently used, are made of synthetic materials, and they don't leave as many threads on the ice. Now, apart from stones and brushes, the only other piece of equipment you would need as a beginner is a rubber sole on one of your shoes, depending on which shoe you lead from. The captain will often carry a stopwatch to gauge when the ice needs to be changed. All equipment and clothing can be bought in the club shop.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20 on page 4. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
A quick word about Montreal Curling Club. It's renowned, not only because it often wins championships, but because it was the first club for any sport in the whole of the North American continent. And although curling is not as well known as many other winter sports, we still boast a certain amount of influence in the National Sports Council. And what are the origins of the game? It's now well established that it started in Scotland in at least as early as the 16th century. Queen Victoria, on her frequent trips to Scotland, often played it, but wrote in her diary that it required exceptional strength to throw the stones. Her patronage attracted a great deal of interest in the game, especially amongst younger players, and this was enhanced further when she granted a royal title to the Caledonian Curling Club, which had been set up in the early 19th century to create standard rules for the game. Curling has always had support in high places. In the 16th century, the Scottish Parliament actually banned golf and football as violent and unprofitable sports. They felt that local men should spend any free time practicing archery for self-defense against their enemies. But the less popular game of curling wasn't included in the ban. The art of throwing stones was thought to be just as useful as shooting arrows. But back to Canada. Here the game has flourished since the beginning of the 19th century, when Scottish soldiers posted there enjoyed playing it on the frozen lakes and rivers. Because of the difficulty in importing granite stones from Scotland, cast iron was used instead, obtained from melted down cannonballs, which had originally been brought over from Europe. Now Canada is regarded as the most successful curling nation in the world. Now, the game you're going to see.
That is the end of Section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to Section 3 on page 5. Part 3. You will hear part of a discussion between two drama students called Charles and Lorna about a songwriting course. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi, Charles. I'm writing my report on the songwriting course for drama students. You know, the 1-week residential course for drama students from different universities where you learn about writing songs. You did that course last year, didn't you? Could you give me some tips for the report? I'm having a few problems with it.
Yes, it was great. Well, Lorna, you could start by thinking about what you got out of it.
Evaluating how useful it was is simple. The challenge is not to go over length.
Referring to published sources might help. That would make it more scholarly too.
OK, I'll go with that.
And saying why you did the songwriting course is important. Some people just do it as another string to their bow to help with auditions for work and things. I thought it was a good opportunity to try out new techniques for communicating feelings and emotions. I was already confident about singing before I did it.
I thought it was the location of the course which made it special, being held in a country house rather than in a university. They were doing some building work on part of the house, though, so it wasn't always easy to concentrate.
I enjoyed the workshop most. How about you?
Well, we were divided into 6 small groups for the afternoon, each with their own advisor. That was the best bit for me, having that discussion with an expert. When we got into pairs to start writing our songs, the idea was to combine people with different levels of knowledge and experience. But my partner preferred working on her own generally.
And what did you think of the course content? I hadn't realised before how important the structure of a song is to its success.
Yes, we learned it's no use writing the most beautiful words and melodies if there's no shape. And we learned about the importance of a chorus in a song.
I knew about that stuff from my singing classes. It's a bit obvious, isn't it?
I suppose so. It was the input on lyrical styles and forms that I found tedious. You could always look them up on the web.
Anyway, how did you get on with writing your song?
It was tough, and Peggy, my partner, was hard work, which wasn't funny, and writing was a slow process as a result of our lack of communication. By the time we finished, I was exhausted.
Writing music from the heart is like that, especially by the end of a course.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Well, that's got the report sorted, thanks. Have you decided which teachers' workshops you're going to do next term?
I want to do Bob Lacey's. He's got a brilliant reputation for voice coaching. You know, getting us to use dialects and different pronunciation and stuff. He gets you to do things like read out a newspaper article in character. It's amazing.
I'm thinking of going to Evelyn Chance's workshop.
Oh, Evelyn. She's quite a character. Is she running the stage fights course again?
Yes, fencing and pretend punches and throwing techniques. She really knows how to help actors use the whole of the space available.
Lots of people like Ted Winter's workshop.
He knows how to deliver. He's keen on actors conveying emotion through their bodies and faces alone. It's a great way to reveal complex relationships and situations to an audience without making a speech of any kind. I'm definitely going to sign up for that one.
If you want to understand a director's ideas, Kevin Gray's workshop would be perfect for you. He likes telling people what to do, and he's always saying you can't have a company of actors reading a play any way they want because they'd end up fighting amongst themselves. They must listen to the director.
What about Dorothy Thomas? She's good at activities for getting rid of stress and, emptying your mind of all thoughts about the past, and that can really help when acting.
Well, I think I'll put my name down for...
That is the end of Part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 3.
Part 4. You will hear part of a talk about recent research into the design of workplaces. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Hello everyone. I recently completed some important research into the way office space is designed and its impact on employees. The open plan office had been the norm for offices around the world. I'm sure you can picture one. A big room with maybe 50 or 100 workers sitting at their workstations. You might think open plan designs are a recent phenomenon, but they actually came about in the early 20th century when businesses needed large numbers of people to do typing. These employees, usually women, used to have to sit in rows working away at their typewriters under the watchful eye of their supervisor. Over the years, designers have come up with several variations on the open theme. In particular, this has been achieved through furnishings. The early designs featured separate desks. A subsequent design introduced the concept of the cubicle. These can have either high screens that workers can't see over, or a screen just low enough to keep a lookout for the manager. And nowadays, with the increase in large call centres, a phenomenon known as hot desking is common. In this system, employees working on different shifts are asked to share the same workstation. As you can imagine, this is not very popular with staff as there is little opportunity to personalise your workspace. In fact, my research shows that employees in general dislike the open plan design. As a part of my research, I conducted a survey of the staff in several large companies with open plan offices. The employees all voiced similar concerns about the design. Firstly, they felt that the open plan took away their privacy, but many also felt the need to carry their valuables with them at all times. So, to some extent, they also felt there was less security with these designs.
Another common complaint may be something for employers to consider when choosing this type of design, and this was that these types of office space are bad for the health. I was intrigued by this possibility, but looking at staff records, it does seem to be borne out. So, if this design is so unpopular, why is it so commonplace? Well, the answer to that is in the benefits that the employers feel this type of design has. Of course, there is the obvious benefit that this design significantly reduces costs, both in terms of rent and even in terms of energy use. Employers also argue that an open plan design leads to better teamwork and communication. They also feel that new staff can learn from observing other workers, so this design can actually help in training staff. However, the complaints voiced by employees seem to suggest that the disadvantages far outweigh the advantages. The reality is that unhappy workers are unlikely to work well together, and there is plenty of evidence to suggest workers are frequently distracted from their work by the noise that is all around them. What is clear is that as designers, we need to think carefully about the impact that our design has both on the staff involved and the work that they do.
That is the end of part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 4.